Three, two, one. We're live. Hello. Welcome along.
Hello,
Hello.
hello. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Caytie, our guest today, and everyone that is joining us for this talk. Um, Caytie has an incredible story, so I'm going to jump into her bio that she kindly provided us so that you have a little bit of background, and I'm hoping that she'll give us a little bit more information. Once I read it, you'll see why. So, um, Caytie is a movement and mindset coach. After surviving a near-death experience in a mass shooting, Caytie began to re-examine her outlook on life, healing, self-love, and spirituality. And on her journey, she discovered that positive impact that intentional movement and prioritizing sunlight could have on her mindset and inner empowerment. And over time, she worked on releasing her limiting beliefs about herself, such as insecurities around her body, low self-esteem in her relationships, her entrepreneurial goals, and a lack mindset. And through this inner work and building awareness, she realized her passion for helping others to heal themselves, body, mind, and spirit. And she has been developing herself as a movement and mindset coach to share her message. And Caytie desires to help others combine movement, grounding, and a healthy circadian lifestyle and a daily self-love practice to raise vibrations and achieve vitality. She believes in turning into our hearts to embody love and consciously choosing who we want to be daily rather than merely existing as who we've always been, so that we can live purposefully and find our inner joy and peace. And her company is Surcharged Warrior. And yeah, she's also specializes in talking about the stresses of not living our purpose, and what happens when we step into authenticity instead. And she believes a big source of our stress and anxiety, and maybe even burnout, can come from all the time and energy we lose when we don't follow our dreams and have a mindset that believes that when we aren't capable of even achieving them. But through mindfulness and deep self love, we can begin to release disempowering beliefs and start embodying who we really are and find ways to pursue our purpose with passion and conviction. And the old fears and anxieties just melt away. So very, very impressive. Would love to dive in deeper with the story and how this huge life-changing event, not only on a physical, mental, and an emotional level, how it's impacted the rest of your life and how you've actually chosen, because there's many options for us when we go through something as big as that, into what direction we can go and what mindset we choose to carry forward. So would you be able to elaborate a little bit more on that for us today?
Yes, absolutely. So, would you like me to go back a little bit and hear a little bit about before the shooting and kind of what led
Yes,
up to
please.
that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction to Natasha. So, I thought I might start with kind of my college years and my mindset going into building my career. And this was a lot of years of not really knowing what I wanted to do or what kind of path I wanted to take. So I went to college and pursued what I was comfortable with and what I knew, which was writing and reading. So I studied English and majored in English literature. And I didn't have a strong connection with college. I never really loved it that much and thought hopefully my path would kind of manifest along the way, that I'd figure it out and find a way to make a living that I might enjoy. Um, so post college, I finished my bachelor's and eventually I got my master's too. I spent most of my 20s just working odd jobs. I didn't have anything really official. I had a lot of minimum wage jobs, a lot of labor intensive jobs, and I never really saw myself doing something much greater than that, because I had the mindset that you had to get a degree in something or have like many years of experience in something. So I had a lot of limiting beliefs about creating abundance and how to create a living. Um, so that was a lot of stress, and it was a lot of years of worrying about money and living paycheck to paycheck. Uh, After my master's, though, I decided I didn't really resonate with teaching or becoming a teacher in like an institutionalized education setting. So I started to pursue digital marketing. I had the goal of working remotely. That was always my dream. Like, I want to work from home. That would be like the best. So I decided to go to Texas. My aunt and uncle invited me. I'm from Michigan, by the way. So I was living in northern Michigan and wasn't sure what to do at that point. And my aunt and uncle said, why don't you come down to San Antonio and reinvent yourself and get the experience that you need? And I did that. And I spent a year in San Antonio. I did an apprenticeship in digital marketing to kind of get my feet wet in what it's like. And I was marketing for an engineering company there. And I I really enjoyed what I did. I really liked learning marketing, and I learned a lot from the program that I was in. But I was a very stressed person. I was a very anxious person, and definitely very burned out most of the time. So I loved the topic of your podcast with touching on these things. Um, I had very vague dreams of writing things someday, but not really sure what that would look like. I I thought it would be really interesting to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't think that I had the skills or the talents or even the smarts to do that. So it was a lot of limiting beliefs around that too, and a lot of insecurities. But after finishing my program, I was down there for a year. I was making my plans to come back to Michigan, and this was during the pandemic. And um, I should say that I had somewhat of a spiritual awakening just before the shooting, which happened early summer in 2020. I was learning a lot of things and doing a lot of research and digging really, really deep into things that were happening in the world that I'd turned a blind eye to for a long time. So I became really passionate about wanting to wake people up. And so I want to come back to that because I think that's important to my story and what eventually led me to my inner journey. But I was going through this awakening and spending a lot of energy trying to convince people of things and staying up late, not resting, many, many hours online, and I was very underrested. So that all led up to the shooting. So I had my car packed and everything ready to come back to Michigan, and I went out with some coworkers on June 12th of 2020. And while we were there, we'd been there about 30 minutes at this place that I had never been to before. And I went to go get a second drink, and there was shooting, there was gunfire. And at first I didn't recognize what it was. Thought it was like firecrackers or something. But once the gunshots started to die out a little bit, I realized that I'd been hit. And it was, just a slight pain at first that started to magnify. But the shock of that made me black out. So just before I blacked out, I turned to my friend who was next to me, and I said, "Oh my God, I've been shot and I fell to the ground and I came to a few seconds later, but I do recall just before falling, like, is this the end of my life? Are these my final moments? And what a it was very disappointing. I thought, wow, I can't believe that I might be leaving right now and I don't feel like I made an impact while I was here. Um, so I came to and it was a really scary moment, of course, and a lot of people were very, very terrified. 8 people were shot during that event. Two of them were my friends, my coworkers were also shot. No fatalities during this shooting, thank God. But just to elaborate a little bit on that moment, I my right lung collapsed soon after because it had been the one of the bullets. I was shot twice in my back. One of the bullets entered very close to my spine and went through my lung and is lodged in my armpit. And my lung collapsed. And I think the panic of what was happening, that combined with the lung collapsing, I started to not be able to breathe. And that it was a really kind of miraculous thing. This lady came up to me and she knew I was struggling to breathe, and she got down close to me and she comforted me. She told me everything was going to be okay and to just breathe and just listen to her breathing. And it helped me to calm my racing heart and to just breathe shallowly. And I got through that moment, and soon after, like only a moment or two after that, the paramedics arrived and took me to the ambulance. And by the time I was on my way to the hospital, like loaded into the ambulance, I had this conviction that I was going to make it, like I was going to get through this. But the journey wasn't over yet. Um, so that was the incident of the shooting. And following that, in the days after, was the like letting it sink in, like that really just happened, and I'm still here. It was such a flood of gratitude and laying there in the hospital. Like I felt like I'd been given a second chance, and I kept going back to that moment like of disappointment. And wow, really, I get another chance to make an impact in this world. So that was that was my feeling of surviving this. Um, so I can talk a little bit about the healing part of the journey, but if you guys have any questions, I can pause here.
Yeah, I just wanted to, wow, just say thank you for sharing so so gracefully such a traumatic event, and just holding space for that, both that event that you experienced and everyone else that was affected, both directly and indirectly. And of, this isn't the only instance, right, that happens around the world, even, even in our country. And I just hold such admiration for you to be able to, you've clearly been there many times in your mind and in your heart, and coming out of that trauma with seeing such a powerful life lesson is truly remarkable. So thank you for sharing. um and I almost wanted to stop you at the point where you're talking about your is it like apprenticeship program, and you were talking about burnout. And I'm I'm interested in how did that manifest for you? Like what symptoms did you experience in your life? I think you mentioned tiredness, and there was also this big factor that you didn't really know what else you were going to do.
Yes, that's a great question. Um, I think it showed up a lot as being very distracted. I think that I spent a lot of time in my free time because I was very, very busy with the program, which had classes and assignments, as well as doing the marketing for the company. So in my free time, I think that really wasn't resting or taking care of myself at all. So I was watching a lot of Netflix, scrolling, chilling, eating junk food. Uh, I was, I stayed pretty active. I did walk every day, but it was always like movement and exercise was always almost like a punishment for me. Like, oh, you shouldn't have eaten all those calories, or you've been sitting all day, get moving. And it was not like a self-loving thing, which it's become now.
Mhm.
But yeah, the stress, um, I was very cynical at that time, and I don't know if people who knew me then would say this, like they'd probably tell me I was a really pleasant person, but I had a lot of anger and frustration about my life. And I kind of bottled that up and took angry walks, and that's kind of how I handled it.
Wow, I can definitely relate to that. It brings me back to my experience in about 2016, where I was I just started in a big company, and I was chasing this career of software engineering and artificial intelligence. And I didn't know, like, my hobbies included things like scrolling, and I spent a lot of time searching on YouTube for like the truth. You know, I was always interested in conspiracies and UFOs and ghosts, and like anything that was kind of unusual really fascinated me. I didn't know why I was doing it. I didn't really know what it was I was looking for. And as you described your journey, it reminds me of Neo in the first Matrix movie, when he's kind of falling asleep on his computer because he's been so tired, exhausted, searching for this truth of this thing that he thinks is the Matrix, until the knock at the door. And I felt in at those times in 2016, I just felt like I didn't even want to, in weekends, I didn't even want to like engage with neighbors. I didn't want to talk to anyone. Like, I just wanted to, like, I was kind of in this kind of shutdown mode of do my job Monday to Friday, and weekends I just recover. And it include like drinking alcohol, eating junk food, spending time with my family, and sleeping. And for me, it had become, over several years, and denying other things like music and other things in my life, my passions, it had become this misaligned journey for me. It was like, and I was just very unhappy about it, but I didn't know what else there was. You know, I didn't know that there were other ways of living. Um, when when you went on to your you went through this big traumatic event through the shooting. I'd love, and I have seen some photos. I remember you posted, and I don't think it was that long ago, on Instagram. You posted some of the photos. I think there's some footage as well of when you were first in the recovery. And I'd love to hear about that, because you're, first of all, it's just so admirable that you're describing um, this gratitude, like a second chance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, more than surviving, like you're given a new life to live in, and in your vision, in your mold. Can you take us through those first stages of your recovery journey?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I I think you're referring to a post I recently made about my first few steps in my recovery.
Mhm.
I did break my foot during the incident somehow. I don't know how, but that was actually a blessing in disguise because it really slowed me down for healing. Because the wounds on my back, they after a few months, I was better and I could function, but the foot had me kind of really slow down and take things bit by bit. But in the first day that I walked, it was maybe 5 days, 4 or 5 days after I got shot, and they'd taken me off the strong pain medication, and I could feel everything, and it was miserable. All of the nerves and everything in my back were inflamed, and they told me, you have to move and you have to get up and go to the bathroom yourself. And I was just shocked, like, what? How can you even think that? Like, I just got shot. I need some help. And it was actually my brother-in-law. He called me, and because he heard that I was struggling with that, and they had taken out the catheter for the first few days. I'd had that like in the ICU and stuff. And he called and he told me about an accident that he'd been in as a teenager, and that everything would be worse if I didn't move. He's like, you just have to move. And that kind of sunk in, and it was like the decision to move made the pain more bearable. It was so amazing. Like, it seemed out of the question to even sit up without agony before that. But then when I made up my mind, I'm like, I'm gonna go. I actually managed to not even take the wheelchair. Like, I got up and I hobbled with my casted foot and did it. So my mom was there because she flew down from Michigan, and she took a Snapchat, and she was just chuckling because I was just being silly. I was like, it's gonna be okay. And I mean, I was still in pain, but it was so much more manageable with that decision. So it was quite awesome.
Wow.
Brilliant. I love that your mom's on Snapchat, by the way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I love how you said about making that decision to heal. And we had a few minutes to catch up before the podcast, and I was saying so looking forward to looking at that mindset into that space of recovery and healing, because there's so many decisions that you could make within that, and how you face this aspect of your life or this journey, and how do you tackle that mentally. And I love how when we do tackle something mentally and get on board and get aligned, that everything else, even the physical body, starts to fall into that alignment, which is absolutely brilliant in that sense. But it's having that courage to make that tough decision, to move in that direction. And I find it so interesting that you broke your foot, because again, have broken my leg as a thing of kind of like slowing down aspect of it. Our feet, our ankles are connected to the energy center of our mission in life. And sometimes when we're not going in the right direction, subconsciously, we're just like, okay, slow down. Really, let's look at what is the path that we're walking on, which is absolutely beautiful to have brought that into your aspect of your healing as well. And I just love how you approach things with, okay, like, this is beautiful in hindsight, and how this actually helped me moving forward. So that's quite brilliant. And how did you tackle that mindset?
How did I tackle that mindset?
Yeah, so it's kind of like you're like, okay, this really resonates with me. I'm moving forward, and it's kind of like, I'm not going to play the victim. I'm going to push my body, kind of a thing, and moving forward, which is brilliant.
Yes, thank you. I did make up my mind that this wasn't going to be something that destroyed me. It was going to be the opposite. It was going to like recreate me. And I think I carry that to this day, to be honest. Um, and the mindset of moving, like, things would be better if I move, it kind of became part of my healing process, really, because what I started doing I was living with two of my brothers at the time. We were sharing a house and we had a little backyard, and um, all the gyms were closed or they were requiring masks at the time because of the COVID. So there wasn't the option to go to the gym, and I couldn't go for walks or runs like I had done before. So I kind of had to find this new way of moving because I knew I'd be in more pain if I didn't move. And when I did an exercise, like even when my energy was so low, and it was for like the first several months, it was like all of my energy had been zapped. It was so draining. Like the slightest bit of exercise, I just remember would feel like I'm gonna black out. And that took a little time to get past that. But even as that was happening, I was like, this is temporary. This is temporary. I'm gonna feel better tomorrow, and I'm gonna feel better the next day. And I started doing movement in the backyard, and it was really kind of cute because I would take my cats out every day because I was like, well, my cats need to ground too. And I'd be out there with them, and I started doing simple stuff in the grass, like tricep dips, or I'd like lift myself up and just do what I could, not on my foot. And that kind of led me into body weight exercises and doing like just isometrics and just holding. And I noticed I was much more in tune with my body than I'd ever been because I was just more present with it. I was watching it heal and feeling it heal. And I was much more aware of the tiny bit of progress, more than I'd ever been, like, rushing through a gym workout or going on a walk. And so every day I was like, wow, I'm a little stronger than I was the day before. And that was amazing to me. So movement and grounding and being in the sun, I noticed especially being in the sun would energize me, and it would make me feel like I'm on just a mini vacation, and it was just like my hour-long practice in the backyard. And so that was my medicine. And what what's so cool about this happening is that deep down, like for many years, I'd had this idea of what I might like to do if money weren't an issue. Like people ask you that, like to help you find your purpose. What would you be doing? And I remember from my early 20s going to a Zumba class and seeing this Zumba instructor up there just looking like she's having the time of her life. And I thought, how cool to have this job where you're really just like raising vibrations, you're getting people to move and have fun. I want to do that. And so in this process of healing and moving every day, I would bring out my little speaker and I'd turn on some high vibe music, and I started moving and getting stronger. And I thought, like, I would really be interested in bringing this to other people. Like, I'd love to share my energy because I know I have really good energy when it comes to like dancing. I've always been like so into going to like weddings or parties where there's like a dance floor and getting people like really hyped up. I love that. So that became like something I was really interested in. So in the last few years, I've worked on I got certified as a group fitness coach, and I have recently been launching classes just in my town, my local area, to get people together. And it's been a long process, like to get to that, because I had to have a lot of time for the inner healing before I was ready to get people together, before I felt like I could do that. But it's amazing to be at that stage. And I can talk a little bit about the inner part too, but I can pause here as well.
Wow. It's so inspiring. And I really love like the posts you make. I can't remember how we met. Caytie was maybe on TikTok or Instagram. I forget, but I was always inspired by when you're outside, it's like your soul is free, and the sun,
Mm-hmm.
which is so easy to ignore, especially after decades working in offices. I've been like, there's a sun outside during the day, especially in Scotland when our winters are, there's just a few hours of sunlight and it rains, and I didn't know what I was missing. It's quite funny in the medical advice. I'm not a doctor, so take this as my personal experience. But in Scotland, certainly the doctors, GPs will just prescribe everyone to take vitamin D, and
Mm-hmm.
it's fascinating. It's almost like, oh, so am I in the wrong country? It's like, well, if you like rain, it's like best in the world. But what I love is when you're outside, there's just this energizing aspect to your work. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
the longer that you're out there, the more energized you become. And you really make me reflect as well on my journey. Like my daily runs haven't always been, I've probably run for about 20 years, Monday to Friday, about 4 or 5 miles, very consistent, very similar distances, very similar routes. And sometimes that negative self-talk is there, right? Like, John, you ate like a McDonald's yesterday. Other fast food is available, and I did actually have the vegetarian burger yesterday, and it's like it didn't feel great today, and I felt compelled to run, but I also felt quite tired, and that moment this morning when I was doing, I kind of do like a short kind of burst of mix of Pilates and yoga, and it's so funny because it's one of the few moments that truly sit with my body, and I just say, how are we feeling? Like, what are we ready for a full set, or do we need like a smaller set, or is there a variation I should explore? um and I'm not amazing at exploration, but I was like, no, today I'm tired, like I need to work out, yes, and then go and nap. I napped for about an hour and a half, an hour and 30 minutes after that, and it felt great. Like it felt like, oh, finally, like I can live a life where I can both ask my body and then be ready to answer. Because sometimes the answers surprise you, right? Sometimes I get a surprising answer, which was like, yes, there's like, yes, like you can work like 10 hours if you want, you're loving it, do it. But you're going to have to make sure, create that space tomorrow if you want to sustain yourself. Um, there's two things that really fascinate me. One is the mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
I When I left my corporate job in May and I took the decision in January, there was for me there was quite a few steps, and one was early January. I woke up in the morning, I took the dog out, and I remember just walking out my driveway, and I thought, there's a version of me that just leaves this job and then goes and finds like my heart aligned path, like the thing that is aligned with my life goals, the things I want in my life, even if I'm not totally sure the what exactly, or really have much of an idea about the how. But there is a version of me that does it. And that mindset shift for me it was like I've been spent years trying to find that mindset shift. And I was fascinated by your journey, as you said, Caytie, like you were saying that you went through this huge moment of gratitude. But I'd like to just compare like the Caytie before and after your traumatic event. Like how how did that contrast shift in you, that mindset shift? What would you, I don't know, can you draw any comparisons between those two versions of yourself?
Yes, thank you for asking. Um, I will say that it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like right after the shooting that I was full of light and love. I was still I started to just get back to my old patterns, just to get through the day. I just did what I already knew, which was spending a lot of time online, scrolling, a lot of time on Twitter, because I thought that it was important to stay informed and but I was really wearing myself out. So it took a little bit of time for the mindset part to shift. Like the mindset around healing my body began pretty quickly because it was right there. Like I had to deal with it. But the inner part, it took months, maybe like 6 or 8 months, really, of getting outside and um, doing these things that were kind of helping me to like see myself in a new way or see life in a new way. Um, so so to kind of talk about that, I I mentioned earlier that I had been very focused on convincing people like, hey, we all need to learn about this. Like, this is important stuff. There's a lot of corruption in the world. That started to shift when I realized that the only real impact I can make really is by healing myself and raising my own vibration. And that was such a huge moment. So like I started to think about like what kind of things raise my vibration, and it was, getting in the sun, prioritizing like seeing the sunrise or the sunset and doing my workouts outside, eating living foods. I resonated with what you were saying, John, about like paying attention to how you felt after eating certain things. I I even made like little recordings of myself like, yesterday I ate pizza rolls, out of a bag, and today I feel horrible. And you could see it in my face. Like I just like the color was off. I was much more tired energetically to do my workout. It's like, okay, we need to eat better. We need to eat stuff that is nourishing and really take care of myself. And slowly I started to shift from what others were doing or what they were pursuing. I just really started to let go of trying to convince anyone of anything. I was like, there's obviously been a lot of stuff going on in the world for our whole lives. There's a lot of knowledge that we haven't been taught, and there's been a lot of programming, whether that's from what we watch, what we consume, and or the way that we were raised, or just different programs that become a part of us, that a lot of it is pretty negative. And once I realized that, it was like, okay, I have to start reprogramming myself. I have to start thinking differently of myself. And I started to watch, like, if I was feeling really not self-loving on a certain day, my energy would be much lower to move my body, or maybe I wouldn't even want to go outside to move. And um I started to just observe my energy when I was not in a loving state. So I guess like the concept of raising my vibration really hit home for me as something I needed to prioritize every day. Because it was kind of like I would guilt myself about it in the beginning, like, well, there's so many things that I could be doing, like going for a drive, or sitting by the lake. It's like, who has time for that? But like that was a shift too. Just like, this is so important to lift ourselves up, and that's the real impact we can make on people, is when we bring like this different energy that's like when we fill our cup. Remember, John, you were talking about this in your first podcast, that filling your cup, and that's what it became about. And so I started to share a little bit about that. Eventually started my social media, and um, that was beautiful. I was able to make connections with people like you, and yeah, and learn more. I think that there's one another point I wanted to make, was that if we remember, if we can fathom and remember that we're always being guided closer to our purpose, always, then we can look at like everything as trying to bring us there. Like even if it's scrolling on social media, I often find like I will just see like something I absolutely needed to see that day. I think it's very divine, very beautiful. Um, and even the shooting, I think it happened for a reason to bring me here because I'd be on a very different path if that hadn't happened. I probably would have come back to Michigan to be closer to my family, and I probably would have just done the same things. I would have rushed into another job that I wasn't passionate about. And, I probably would have, to fill my cup, would really have been like the things I was doing before, which weren't actually taking care of myself, like a lot of just watching shows and killing time because that's what felt like rest, but it really wasn't rest.
I think you're so right into that conditioning of what is self-care and what it's not, right? That we've been taught to believe. And it's amazing how we are become so disconnected from our bodies, because that was the same thing. And it's that body that keeps kind of like showing up and going, hey, hey, until you like absolutely forced to have a look at it and then really, really connect in with the vessel that is here. And what we resist continues to persist unless we choose it. And I think that is important as well. And you're so right in the sense of, what food are we putting into our minds and into our bodies and into, what are we watching? What are we listening to? What are we saying? What are the words, the vocabulary that we're using as well is so important. But I remember watching it was a movie on Netflix. And by the time I realized it was one of those, like, we're just going to chill in Netflix, it was so scary. And it must have been like a psychological thriller that the girls wanted to watch. I was literally sitting like this, like in tension. And I'm like, this is not chill. This is not relaxing. This is stressful, kind of a thing. So it's like, what are we watching? What are we putting in can stress us out more than not, but it's like it's that whole conditioning. We go out into the workplace, we study, we learn, we go into the workplace, get a good job, work those hours, come home, watch TV, eat, and then repeat, rinse and repeat. And I think it's not until we start really connecting into our bodies, which is what those instances in our lives that show up to kind of like, oh, hey, you are, soul having a physical experience. You need to look after the physical, that it's not selfish. And a lot of the times we're taught that, self-care is selfish, but it's a necessity. That when we start looking at it as like, it's absolute necessity. So I love how you switch things around and kind of like, no, this is part of my practice. And, and with you, Jon, it's like, how much running do I need today? Right? Like, how much do I need? What do I need? And yeah, even for myself, I've started flipping it into what would bring me the most joy today. I have an open day today. What would I do that would actually bring the most joy to my physical, my mental, my emotional bodies? And then pursue that, kind of a thing. So moving that moment to moment and really becoming present, I think is super important as well. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to make another point about how rest can also be doing something active. And I've really found, and I think Jon and I have resonated about this over the past few years since we've been following each other, is the playfulness of movement and playing in general is almost like a type of rest because it's like rest for the soul. Like it's letting go of all of the big stuff that we're dealing with in our lives and getting tuned into our inner child. And that's where I think a lot of like the creativity and wonderful ideas can come from is when we're playing. So
I, I have to feel compelled. I hate it when this happens to me. I feel compelled to share that. I remember after we chatted our last time, Caytie, that it was like, Jon, you got to go and play, like go and explore things. And I had this mission to go and climb a tree, and and I used to love doing it as a kid. And I think at that time I'd already bought a skateboard, and I'm 47, and I hadn't, skateboarded since I was about 16, and bought skateboard. Miraculously, took my dog out and didn't run him over or fall off, and I really love, at least do it like every Friday morning now, and it is very soul restful. Like I'm not really super interested in relearning all those tricks I did. Maybe some would be nice, but it's such fun, and it's the reaction I had from others. Like, you wouldn't believe how many people told me not to do it. Like, it was the most dangerous thing I'd ever done in my life. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure driving my car is much more dangerous than a skateboard. Um, and the tree was a really interesting journey because it's not what I expected. When these explorations you try and you're thinking, well, what are all the worst things that can happen? And I just did the stupidest thing, which was, after building up all this kind of anxiety about this thing I knew I had to do, and I live in an area surrounded by these big, beautiful trees, and I had all these excuses about, the branches being too high to reach and that I couldn't get up it. So eventually, at 5 a.m. one morning, going off my morning run, went into the woods, into the dark woods, just looked at the nearest branch, kind of, I can describe it, leant right back towards the end of this quite thin branch, pulled myself up on it. It then broke, and I fell flat on my back and like winded myself. And I was like, oh, and I just like rolled over on my side into the kind of safety position, however you call it. And I was like, well, why did I do that to myself? Like, what? That was an awful experience. And I just had this feeling, which was like, but it was still really fun. I'm really glad I did it. And then there was this feeling of, you know what? Sometimes you can still be foolish, right? And just do things anyway without really thinking it through. And all I did was then I follow a couple of Instagrammers that climb trees for hobbies. And it's really simple things like, you know what? Don't go to the end of the branch, go to like the bit at the trunk. Like, that's much stronger. And and my physics isn't that good, but it's good enough to know that it's a really bad lever being out on the end of a thin branch. And so since then, I've found it much more enjoyable, and it's incredible, right? Like, it's that programming. Sometimes, especially the older I get, part of me is like, oh, like, be a responsible father, software engineering leader, like whatever label I put on myself, and didn't want to stand out and look strange to people. But at the same time, like, my inner child and my body are like, but it's so much fun. Like, do you remember? Like, why do you think trees exist? Think about all the animals that climb them. Like, it's so much fun. And you do it loads, Caytie, with your exercises. And I just so I want to thank you for that, both that experience, but also I have a question about exploration. So in our path, and I'd love to come on to a meditation shortly, in our path to finding like our kind of our goals in life, like, what are the things that we really want to do that feel truly aligned with our hearts? What advice do you have, or what experience do you have of being able to explore these things that raise your vibrations and help you find your life path?
That's a really good question, and I think I have a way that I'd like to answer it. Hopefully, it addresses your question about getting tuned into your purpose and raising your vibration. So I really think that the more we tune into self-love is the more we can find what our deepest desires are. And a lot of times I think that we're so kind of blinded by our limiting beliefs about ourselves that we just push aside those desires, and we, come up with all the reasons why it can't happen. But if we have a self-love practice and we get into like affirmations and meditation, and especially visualization, like, what does your ideal reality look like, then we can find those limiting beliefs easier, because I think they kind of stay hidden until we start thinking about what we would really, really like to experience. And that's how I started to find what I really wanted to do, what I thought might be possible for me was to think about what I wanted. And then I found like all of these negative beliefs, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't believe that I'm worthy of abundance. I don't believe that I'm worthy of love, like a beautiful relationship and so many other things. I don't think that I'm worthy of having my own house, like buying my own home. And I think that yeah, it's so key to find out what those limiting beliefs are. Like there are some, I think a lot of people have there's some like naysayers about affirmations, right? Because sometimes the affirmations aren't specific enough to what we're trying to create. So I believe like square one is to figure out what we would really love to create and then find out all the reasons that we are holding about why that's not possible and then create affirmations from that and create a vision from that. So I think it's a beautiful process because like getting into meditating, like for me, it was like exploring my subconscious, like let's see what's here, and then let's shift it to that most ideal vision. Like picture that amazing reality where you're in the relationship of your dreams, you're in the home of your dreams, you're doing things you've always wanted to do, but you never thought was possible for whatever reason, maybe money or health or whatever. And imagine it and then go back to it again and again and feel it. Really, really feel it. And then it hits like this part of yourself, like the love in you that you are deserving of that. You are worthy of all of that and more. And yeah, and to make that practice every day will change your life. It changed mine. Like as soon as I started making this a thing, like a daily thing, I things just started to really transform in my life. People, experiences, like things flowed so easily. So that's what I would say.
Wow. I
Beautiful.
feel like I've just cheated and you've just given me all the words for the meditation.
Well, good.
Perfect. And before we go into that, I know when I come out the meditation, I tend to be just in a little bit of a different planet. Is there anything else, Natasha, you'd like to ask or share?
No, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and for giving us some tools as well that we can use in our daily lives and for reminding us to connect into our inner child and find joy again, because that's where our creativity is, absolutely. And it's just, yeah, it's one I think we forget to laugh and to enjoy life. I think as we grow older, life becomes very serious, and I was there for sure. And it's just to remember to yeah to bring the enjoyment in again. Just because we grow older doesn't mean we need to act like we're old, you know. So yeah, laughter is just as good medicine as is crying or anything else as well. So I think that's wonderful. Thank you for the good reminders of that.
Thank you, Natasha.
Fabulous. Well, I'll take us through a short meditation, and I'd like to just begin by taking 3 deep breaths. And you can choose to join me, breathing in through the nose, nice and deep. And breathe out through the mouth, nice and loud. Breathe in through the nose, nice and deep. And breathe out any low vibration, emotion, or energy, nice and loud. And once more, breathe in through the nose, nice and deep. And breathe out anything that no longer serves you. And continue to breathe deeply and calmly at a pace that feels right for you. And I'd like you to join me in bringing your attention to your body at this time. And perhaps taking a moment just to ask our bodies a simple question. How are you today? And just allowing our bodies to answer. And now I'd like you to join me on a little journey together. And first, we're going to start this journey at home, or it can be a place at work. I'd like you to choose a place where you spend a lot of time sitting, resting, or lying down. Perhaps it's the sofa or armchair in your living room when you're watching TV. Perhaps it's your bed, or perhaps it's a place where you're at work. And I'd like you to see yourself sat, stood, or laying down, however you are. And just be aware of your physical posture at that time. Are you sat up or stood up straight and tall? Is your body energized, or do you feel more slumped down, heavier? Are you even aware of your body and what it's doing? And just to hold space for your body at that time, knowing that there's no wrong, there's no right, there just is and are experiences for us. And so, if you're sat on a chair, for example, and your body is sat still and motionless, I'd like you to break down the walls in front of you and ahead of you, start to build a path that runs from directly in front of you all the way out into the future. It's a bit like a yellow brick road that winds and continues as a journey out into the distance. And this is the path of your life ahead of you. It's the future ahead of you. And either side of the path are things that you don't enjoy doing so much in life. And on the path itself, although there's bumps, and sometimes the path itself is a little bit like a roller coaster, I'd like you to see that it goes all the way on into the future, about 5 years ahead of you now. And that 5-year version of you, 5 years' time, you can catch a glimpse of that version of you there. You can see just at a distance to begin with what that version of you is doing in 5 years' time. See if you can visualize that. What are you doing? Who are you with? Where are you living? What do you do for fun, for work? Do you do work for fun? What is it you see in your life? And just zoom in a little bit closer to that future version in 5 years' time of you, and take a deeper look at the heart of you and that future version of you. How does your body feel in 5 years' time? How does it feel inside? Have you been able to build your self-love? Have you been able to do the things in your life? Are you living that moment now where you're doing all the fun things, some of which you did when you were a child? and some new things you've learned on the way, whether it's moving, dancing, singing, writing, painting, drawing, whatever it is that ignites your heart and fills you with love. And I'd like you to just feel for a moment that future version of you, that feeling of self-love and excitement that you have for your life at that time. And now we'll do the important part. I'd like you to take that feeling from the future version of your heart and imagine taking, as if you could take a big tube of light, like a big silky string, and extend that feeling of love from the future version of you. And I'd like you to bring it all the way along the path that stands between you today and the future version of you. Bring it all the way down the path, up and down over any obstacles, keeping on your path the whole way, no matter where it winds, and bring that feeling all the way back into your heart, into this now moment. And I invite you, if you're ready, to fill your heart now with that beautiful love, that self-love, that joy. Imagine your heart is like a cup and you're filling it all the way up to the top comfortably with this beautiful love energy. And this is a gift from yourself to yourself. Self-love is only a gift that you can give yourself. And you're doing it right now. And you're feeling lighter and brighter and excited. And it no longer matters how you get there. It doesn't matter what comes between this now moment and that future version of you, because the feeling will guide you. Your heart will guide you. And there's now a beautiful, silky light thread running from your heart now to this version of you in 5 years' time. And the great news is you can hold this feeling right now. It's the feeling right now and every day between now and 5 years, and that 5 years never stops. It just keeps going. And now I'd like to give you one task to reflect on before we end. And that is, what will you do next after this meditation? What will be the first thing you do tomorrow? What will you do to follow that thread of self-love from now to the future version of you that's living in your dream life? To take one step closer every day, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour you can dedicate each day to holding that feeling, doing the things you love, exploring, raising your vibrations. What is the one thing you're going to do? And just allow yourself to answer this. Allow the answer as a feeling and as a practical step you will take. When you're ready, I'd like you to continue to hold this feeling for as long as you choose. May it fill you with love and excitement and passion for your life, and help you find and explore the things that fill your cup and fuel you each day, and help you lead by example. Lead yourself by example with your self-love. And I invite you now to come back to your body, back to this present moment, continuing to hold those beautiful feelings for as long as you choose to. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and move your body and come back to us. I didn't really want to leave. I'm not letting go of that feeling.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Jon.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for that, Jon. That was wonderful.
Thank you. Well, I think that's about us today. Thank you so much, Caytie and Natasha. Thank you for just sharing so transparently and such an inspirational story and journey. And although we didn't touch on it in great detail, I'm really excited for your classes. I really love that about your future, Caytie, is that you're doing it now. And at no point did you say, it's that one thing with that one qualification and I do the same thing that everyone else is doing. Like there's this beautiful sense of exploration. And I was literally just gonna say, I don't care what it is, Caytie. I'm there, I'm signing
Yeah.
up. Like I want to fly out there and I wouldn't care what it was because I know that just what you do is so inspirational. And if I had a like a tip of the iceberg of the feeling that I see you experiencing when you're doing what you love, it would be worth whatever you're charging. Um, and so I want to wish you all the best with your adventure. And is how can we best follow you, or if there's people in your area that can join you online, how can people find you?
Sure. So the best ways are I'm Sun Charged Warrior on Instagram, on TikTok. I have a Facebook too, and I'm slowly dipping my toes into YouTube. So you can find me any of those places.
Fabulous.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jon. It was so lovely to meet you, Caytie, and get to know you a little bit of you, and absolutely so inspirational. And yeah, I really see your success, and yeah, the work that you do is important in this world, and all the hearts that you touch and people that you help to shift with your movement is incredible. So thank you for doing what you're doing. It's absolutely incredible.
Thank you. And likewise, thank you for what you guys are doing with this podcast and the work that you do. Thank you for having me. It's been my honor.
Oh, likewise. Thank you, Caytie. Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you again soon. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.